Thanks for joining me at 6:30. I'm Rick Marinon. It's a very special night here on Fox 23 News at 6:30. I'm talking with independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
What we're going to do in the rural areas of our country, what we're going to do for those who still suffer within the United States from hunger, what we're going to do around the rest of the globe, and whether we're going to continue the policies that have been so unsuccessful in Vietnam of American troops and American Marines carrying the major burden of that conflict. I do not want to, and I think we should move in a different direction.
It was 56 years ago then U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy Sr. was mounting a serious effort to become the 1968 Democratic presidential nominee. Minutes after concluding that very speech, RFK would be assassinated. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was 14 years old when his father was killed in 1968. Now he's mounting his own presidential bid. Lord knows we could have talked for hours about his beliefs and his family's legacy alone, but we only got 15 minutes. We may not have talked about everything, but I think at the end of all of this, you'll see there were some things to consider this November. In an exclusive, here's Bobby Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. I was wondering, before I came out here, it looks like you did get a post-debate bump of some kind, at least from CNN's polling. You received at least a couple of points. I was wondering what your reaction is to the debate overall, especially since you weren't allowed in the room.
I think the debate was a sad evening for our country, but also for democracy around the world. I mean, we have 341 million people in this country, Rick, and I think it's kind of shocking that that was the best that we could produce. I think, we're telling the world that American democracy, that the cream rises, that it will yield the finest ideas, the finest personnel to run our country. And I think it's hard for us to it's hard for people to understand how we got to where we are. We have 71% of the American public did not wanted to see me on that debating stand, and yet CNN made a deal that with the DNC and with the RNC that I think is difficult to justify. It is what they essentially did was an illegal campaign contribution. They could not do this. They couldn't have gotten away with this if they did the debate with the Presidential Debating Commission. They had to go to a private company, for-profit company that made tens of millions of dollars on that debate and persuade them to adopt criteria that would allegedly keep me off the stage. And I think the major shortfalls is that they didn't talk about the things that Americans want to hear about. How are they going to deal with inflation? How are they going to deal with the sticker shock that every American is feeling every time they come close to a checkout counter in a grocery store? How are they going to deal with the budget deficit that these two presidents created in 4 short years? President Trump spent more money, spent more debt, created more debt than all the presidents in American history combined, from George Washington to George W. Bush. We're now $34 trillion. President Biden is on track to beat him. And they can't talk about that. They can't talk about this toxic polarization that's tearing our country apart, because both of them are feeding it and feeding upon it. They can't talk about the chronic disease epidemic that now affects 60% of our children and is our biggest annual expenditure, 5 times our military budget. They can't talk about winding down the military and all these foreign wars that we're involved with, because they both have been encouraging those and waging those wars and financing them. And they can't talk about this corrupt merger of state and corporate power because they've presided over it. The day that I get into office, I'm going to issue an executive order saying that any federal official who lies to the American public is going to immediately lose their job. These two presidential candidates spent 90 minutes on television lying to the public again and again and again about basic stuff. Oh, I don't think that they are going to do that. We need to restore trust in our institutions. We need to restore pride in our country, the moral authority that we once exercised when I was a boy abroad, and the moral authority at home. Running up $34 trillion debt that our children are going to be forced to pay is immoral. And so all of the issues that they want to talk about are issues that are not the existential issues that are really that Americans want to hear about. And, people, we did a debate, where I was on stage with them. We did kind of an AI debate. And that made me answer the same questions in real time as they were. And I urge people to go on to realdebate.com and look at that debate. You can find it also on my account on X.
Well, let me ask you, you do have ballot access in Oklahoma. How is your ballot access going? Do you have a path to 270 at this point? And how do you get to being able on a path to 270?
We already have enough signatures. Rick, we already have enough signatures to get on the ballot in half the states, way over 270. By the end of this month, we will have enough signatures to get on the ballot in every state. The number of states that were actually on the ballot is much smaller than that because many of the states have adopted procedures where they will not approve us until the end of August. So we have, in most of these states, we have 2 to 3 times the number of signatures that we need. We've got all the tough states. We have California, the ones they said we could never get: California, New York, Florida, and Texas. And from now on, all of the states are pretty easy. So we're, within 4 weeks, we'll be on the ballot everywhere. We'll have enough signatures to get on the ballot everywhere.
Well, because the big question I get from friends and family is, can he put up Ross Perot kind of numbers when it comes to a third-party candidate? Do you think you are on that trajectory to get those kinds of big numbers once this is all finalized?
Yeah, I think I am. I'm now beating President Biden and President Trump among independents, which is the biggest political party. 2 days ago, Gallup released a poll, really a shocking poll, that says that 51% of Americans now identify themselves as independents. This has never happened before. Independents have always been fewer than Democrats and Republicans. This is the first presidential race in history where they now outnumber. There's only 23% of Americans identify as Democrat, 25% Republican, 51% is independent, and I'm beating President Biden and President Trump in that cohort. That cohort is dramatically undercounted in virtually every poll, so you're not seeing that strength in the polls. Furthermore, I'm beating President Biden and President Trump among all Americans under 35. My favorability ratings are way higher than either of them. In head-to-head races, I beat both President Trump and President Biden. I beat President Biden in a landslide. I win 39 states. He wins 11. This is the biggest poll taken during this election, 10 times the size of most polls by Zogby. So it has a margin of error almost zero. And I beat President Trump in a head-to-head race. I'm the only one. I'm the only candidate today that can beat President Trump.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk the issues with Bobby Kennedy, positions he says Democrats and Republicans are not offering up to voters. We'll be right back.